you can still have a little bit of fun on pavement.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overrun. As usual, I am your host Chase Bierenkoven, and this week we're taking a look at the Mercedes-Benz G-Class EV. The Mercedes-Benz G-Class, or G-Wagen, or Geländewagen if you speak a little Deutsch, is Mercedes-Benz luxury off-road SUV. And this one is a little bit different. This is the G580 with EQ technology, and that means that while it doesn't really look all that different from a regular gas-powered G, it is very different. This is the electric one, and today what we're going to find out is if the new electric G is worthy of the G name. Under the hood of the G-Class EV is obviously a giant piece of sound-deadening plastic, but under that, you will find two of this car's 4 electric motors. Now, those 4 electric motors are good for a grand total of 579 horsepower and 859 pounds-feet of torque. Now, not only is that more than the standard G, but there's also quite a lot more going on here that we'll get into. All of that, though, is fed by a 116 kilowatt-hour battery and good for a total estimated range by the EPA of 239 miles. When you do eventually run out of battery range, you will need to charge the G580 with EQ technology. It'll probably charge in the time it takes you to say the name, but just in case it doesn't, you open this and you'll find a CCS port. Now, this is NACS compatible with an adapter, but regardless, maximum charge speed out of this battery is up to 200 kilowatts. And that means that, according to Mercedes at least, you'll be able to go from 10 to 80% in just about 32 minutes at maximum charge. Now, normally when a manufacturer sets out to make an electric version of their already gasoline-powered car, they try and set it apart. They try and make it look a little bit different, maybe new front and rear fascias. Mercedes doesn't bother with any of that. And so when you look at one of these, if you see one coming the other way down the street, it's just a G-Wagen. And I kind of like that. I kind of think that's the point. I think that's rather cool. But there are some cool things that we should also touch on that are EQ specific. But first, I want to start with this front fascia here. It's pretty much unchanged, and I think it looks really cool. It's obviously extremely distinct. This 2 headlight design with the low grille and the big Mercedes badge up front has been a G staple since ever, really. The other cool thing about the G is these side marker lights. These actually help a lot with your visibility in addition to being turn signals. You know exactly where the corners of the car are when you're off-roading, which is obviously extremely helpful. Anyways, follow me down the side. I'm going to show you some of the EQ specific stuff. Let's start with these wheels. These are 20-inch AMG branded wheels. They come with all of the Edition 1 cars, which means if you get a 2025 car, it has these wheels on here. This one's got summer tires on it. I'm hoping that you can get some all-terrains because that's kind of the point. But anyways, the other EQ specific item here is there's a little bit of blue accenting on this side striping, piping, whatever you want to call it, that runs the length of the vehicle. And there's an EQ badge here, and that is it. Otherwise, standard G-Class all the way down to the back of the car. There are only 2 real differences back here that you need to know about. First, G580 badge. That's really the only other way to tell that this is the EV. The other item, of course, is the missing spare tire. That's it. Other than that, completely standard G-Wagen, and that is, of course, the point. So let's talk about the interior of the G-Class EV. For starters, I want to start with all of the Edition 1 specific stuff. There's a couple of things in here that you get that you wouldn't ordinarily get in a non-Edition 1 G that you would buy, like in the 2026 model year. For one, there's these seats, these 2-tone leather seats with this blue contrast stitching. These are Mercedes multi-contour seats, which means they are heated and ventilated, infinitely adjustable, or near as makes no difference, in addition to having massage functionality. They're extremely comfortable and they hold up very well over a long drive. You can even turn on an activating massage, which kind of like helps circulate your blood a little bit and move you around in your seat so that your legs and your feet and your butt aren't falling asleep while you're on a road trip. But there's a lot of other more G-Class specific stuff in here too. You get a little Edition 1 badge on the grab handle. You'll also note that this carbon fiber has like a blue accent to it, which is kind of cool. And that's really it for the Edition 1 specific changes. Now in here, in the center console, I want to point out that there are a lot more physical controls than you would otherwise find in a Mercedes interior. And that is why it is my favorite Mercedes interior, because it's not so touch heavy. Down here you have the traditional trackpad as well as all your drive modes and stuff, your parking cameras, all that is here, all that is buttons, and though the piano black looks a little gross now after a few days of use, it's still better than a haptic interface. Over here, we have the off-road cockpit for the G-Wagen, and we'll have to turn the car back on to demonstrate some of this stuff and hope that the radio doesn't come on. In the meantime, you can see that there are some off-road cameras here, and those come up, and you can see where the front wheels are in addition to the bumpers. You can even see that the wheels move around with the steering wheel on the screen, and then you can turn off the parking sensors here. There's also an auto camera function that'll move things around for you. But circling back over here, I want to talk about these two buttons here, which are exclusive to the electric G-Class. This is for the G-turn button. You put it in low range, and then you hit this button, and it will do a sort of tank turn. And as the button indicates, the car will spin clockwise or anti-clockwise on its own axis by rotating the electric motors in opposing directions, like a tank would. This is also the Mercedes G-turn functionality. Basically what it does is it allows for more steering angle input to virtually decrease the car's turning radius. The rest of the interior over here, however, is standard Mercedes-Benz. We have this wheel, which I have been very vocal about hating because it's too fat. It's very large, it's very difficult to grip fully. I just don't like it. There's also a ton of haptic controls on either side, which you can of course manipulate in the gauge cluster, and you can scroll through a couple of different menus and gauge cluster layouts here. All of that is very standard Mercedes-Benz, but this is still by far my favorite interior on a Mercedes just because of the wealth of physical controls that are still in here. Okay, back seats. Ow. Man. I guess these are really metal. That hurt. I skinned my knee a little bit on that. Speaking of, that sound system is actually pretty nice. Anyways, once you move the headrest up, this is a really upright and close back seat. I have plenty of leg room because I'm sitting behind myself and I'm pretty short, but you can help a little bit if you're taller by reaching back here. You can recline the seats a little bit so that you have a little bit more room. But just like up front, this is a very upfront, very narrow car, or I'm sorry, very upright, very narrow car. The windows are super close, but this is still a really nice place to be. As you can see back here, we have some climate control functionality and a couple USB-C ports down low. You can also fold the seats down, and there's a little bit of a pull out here so that you can store your drinks or whatever. I forgot to mention up front, those cup holders in the center console are actually cooled. These obviously are not. So I want to kick off cargo with something that's very different about the new electric G-Wagen, and that is this replacement for the spare tire. It is actually lockable waterproof storage. You push a little button here and it opens up. You can keep your charge cable right here. There's also some netting back here and some netting over here and a little quirk and or feature right there. Now, moving inside, there's a little bit more going on. In addition to what I think is probably the best sounding door in the automotive industry. I think that's a great noise. Anyways, I want to point this out. This is kind of cool. It's like a skate decky material so that you can step up on the roof without slipping and breaking your neck. Anyways, you lose a good bit of cargo space back here as a result of the electric powertrain. This is about 20 square feet of cubic feet of cargo space, and you get about 10 more out of the regular gas-powered G-Wagen. So let's talk about what it's like behind the wheel of the new electric G-Class. To be totally honest with you, it feels a lot like driving just one of the regular old gas-powered ones. And that's because Mercedes has put this on the same ladder frame chassis as you would get if you went out and bought, say, one of the V8 ones. And that means that it rides, steers, and drives a lot like those gas-powered alternatives to this. I think that's a good thing because the point of this car, at least to me it seems, is that this is just supposed to be a G-Class with a battery instead of an engine, and it pulls it off. You kind of forget it's really quiet in here, so the sound system sounds really great in here, unlike some of the other Mercedes models that we've tested. The driving position is excellent. You have tons of visibility. Like I said in our design segment, you can use those turn signal markers at either end to kind of identify where your wheels are. But even if you can't, and you're off-road, you can get into the off-road cockpit down here, and you can use that to get into the camera suite and figure out exactly where your wheels are and where they should be. Now, speaking of off-road, I do just want to touch on something real quick and apologize. We just are not going to be off-roading this one. This EV came to us on summer tires. And while I think that that's great for grip and the available 850 pounds-feet of torque that this thing generates, it's also a little bit of a problem when it comes to off-road capability. We've already had some air pressure issues with this thing during our loan. I think maybe because of a cold snap we got, but just to be safe, we don't want to risk a puncture and we're not going to off-road this thing. But that's fine because, as I'm about to demonstrate, you can still have a little bit of fun on pavement. Obviously, the power that's available here is just ridiculous. It slams your head back into the headrest. It's almost hard to pick your head back up off the seat back while you're accelerating at full throttle. This thing is really, 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 really impressively fast. Almost to the point where it's kind of unnerving and disconcerting just because of how big and, floppy this thing is. It means that there's just so much available power and so little available body control that you're just constantly bouncing around at high speed. It feels really crazy. It's almost a little scary, and I think that that's kind of what makes it fun. But anyways, I think that that's probably a good time to wrap up and move on to the rest of the video. So if you want an electric G-Wagen, what's it going to cost? It'll be about $149,000 to about $163,000 depending on delivery, destination, all of that kind of stuff, right? But it's also worth noting that all 2025 models are the Edition 1, and that means that you get a lot of options thrown in with it, but also a pretty hefty price increase. That adds about $18,000 to the bill, and on top of the paint, the one that you see here, $187,000. G-Class is obviously supremely expensive, but there are other cheaper alternatives that manage similar performance. Now, obviously, there's really nothing like a G-Wagen, but there are other larger, more practical, better performing electric off-road SUVs on the market. And the biggest one that comes to mind, for me at least, is the Rivian R1S. Now for $107,000, you get 850 horsepower and 371 miles of range in the R1S Tri-Motor. That's obviously quite a lot more performance, range, and practicality than this here. But of course you're going to do it without a lot of the G-ness that's involved here. The cool doors, the looks, a lot of that is part of the G's higher asking price. But if you just need an electric off-road SUV, the Rivian R1S significantly undercuts the G580 with EQ technology. The new electric G-Wagen is still just a G-Wagen. It feels like a G-Wagen with a powertrain swap. The electric motors, the battery, all of that, it doesn't really fundamentally alter the G-Class experience. Now yes, the G-turn and all of that does do a lot for the experience. It's very cool, it's fun to show your friends. Is it a practical feature? No, but this is also a car that's about the experience, kind of like a supercar, and so it doesn't really need to satisfy any practical reason for being able to do crazy Transformers shit. However, V8 go burr. I like the V8 better. I think that if I were gonna drop this kind of money on this kind of car and the G-Class experience, I would just need to have the V8. That, to me, is what the G-Class is. And while I understand the argument for this electric one, there is one problem, one counterpoint, the Rivian R1S. It's significantly cheaper, it offers better performance and better range, and also similar, if not better, off-road capability. And because of that, it's really hard to justify the significant price increase that the G-Class EV represents over the Rivian R1S. And with that, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please do remember to like and subscribe. It helps the channel grow, helps us keep making fun of EVs or liking them, and we'll find out which that is in the next one. Thanks, guys. Bye.